was going to Spain and said normal service would resume, and they were famous last words as I managed to break my Mac whilst I was in Spain, which means that normal service hasn't quite resumed. So this is a very short intro into this episode, which is a really, really interesting conversation with a lady called Amy from the Daisy Network. It'll all be explained as to what Daisy does and who they support and how they can help you when you start listening. You may be able to hear some strange noises. We've currently got workmen on the roof of our house. That's just one of the many things going on. But I wanted to tell you about the exciting kind of things that have been going on with me with the Fertility Podcast, because last week I was in London at the Dive-In Festival, which was a big event that had been put on by the insurance company. I'd been invited by AXA Insurance to talk about fertility in the workplace. It was brilliant. It was really well received, and I've got a fascinating interview coming up with a female CEO talking about her experience of going through treatment whilst maintaining a top-level job and what she's trying to do to normalise the conversation amongst senior level women and women in general in the workplace, so that you don't have to think that your career has to stop for treatment, but you do need to think that you need to give yourself a little bit of headspace, of course, whilst you're going through treatment, whilst maintaining a full-on job. And I can't wait to share that conversation with you. And then the other thing that happened in Fertility Podcast world was this Saturday just gone, so the 28th, if you're listening in real time, 28th of September, the Easy Bit documentary premiered at the Raindance Festival in London, which I narrated, and you'll have heard me talk about the Easy Bit documentary with Tom Webb, the director, and you'll be able to find chats I've had with him, and hopefully as soon as I've got a link and more information about where else it will be screened, I can share that with you. But I was delighted to be involved, as I've said on this podcast, and it premiered, so that's very, very cool. Right, let's get on with this show. Make sure you're listening to the end so that you can hear the show notes, and do subscribe at Fertility Poddy on Insta and Twitter, and my closed Facebook group is Talk Fertility. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to Talk Fertility, a show where we do just that, talk about fertility. I'm Natalie Silverman, host of the Fertility Podcast, which I launched in 2015, once successfully pregnant after having fertility treatment.
And I'm Kate Davis, a trained fertility nurse and founder of Your Fertility Journey, where I work one-to-one with women and couples to help them understand and optimise their fertility.
Kate, I hear no ticking clock. I can't hear Isla the dog. I do think that we've missed a trick though, because I think Isla was almost on the verge of becoming a celebrity.
Yeah, she was. Hashtag Isla.
Yeah. So can we maybe bring her back later?
For a guest appearance.
I know she's off doing some forward planning, isn't she, for the show at the moment?
She is. She's banned. She's the other side of the door, much to her disgust. Clock is out. No flies. We're okay. And no rumbling tummy. I've had porridge. It's good.
Well, we're starting early. We'll wait to see. Welcome to another Talk Fertility show. Kate and I sadly aren't in the same place, so we use the power of technology to come together. And if you heard our previous episode, that didn't quite happen. You heard a conversation that I had done with Katie and Tom, who were part of our Meet the Makers series, and then you heard Kate's wisdom. But as often as we can, we try to both get to speak to our guests. And what we want to do is cover the whole kind of range of issues that affect our fertility, which is what this next chat is going to be really interesting to find out more about, because we're going to be talking about menopause, and it's something that's been in the press quite a bit lately, and that's what sparked our conversation, wasn't it, Kate?
Yeah, it is. And I think it's an area that often isn't spoken about a great deal, and especially when you're looking at premature ovarian failure for younger women. And it is quite a devastating diagnosis to have. So I was really interested in talking to the Daisy Network, who offer a huge amount of support and signposting and resources for women with premature ovarian failure and women that are considering possible HRT to help them through this period of their kind of journey, really. So I'm looking forward to having a chat with them. It'd be fascinating.
Because we'll talk about this more with Amy, who we're going to be speaking to from the Daisy Network. I'd always assumed the menopause happened to you later in life, and I've only been learning since working in this space about premature ovarian insufficiency and the effect it can have as a teenager, being told that. I mean, what you do with that information, we'll get more from Amy. But is it something that's talked about quite a lot in your groups that you work with?
Yes Yes and no. I think it's an area that still needs to be highlighted more, and I think conversations need to be opened up because I think there isn't enough discussed, and I think it is often for women, in their 20s or in their 30s that might have this being diagnosed, or even teenagers, how devastating that can be and how it would completely alter the course of their fertility. So definitely more discussion needs to be had. But like I said, the whole discussion needs to be about the menopause as well, even if it's in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, it's still a bit of a taboo, still an area that women feel really isolated over. So definitely conversations need to be had and opened up.
And it's normalising it, which is what we're trying to do, isn't it? It's getting it not such a, oh my goodness, seeing it in the Sunday papers. Oh, they're writing about menopause. Ooh. We don't really want that reaction. We want it to just be a part of the conversation that we're having about all areas of our fertility, and not just that women go mad and have hot flushes when they reach the menopause.
Yeah, I mean, I chat to quite a lot of women who kind of maybe might be in their 50s or whatever that are going through the menopause, and you suddenly see them, or they'll suddenly be really apologetic and say, oh gosh, I'm really sorry, I'm having a hot flush. But actually, I haven't even noticed. But I think there is, there's that perception that when you're having a hot flush, everybody can see. But actually, you kind of don't. But I think when it's happening to you, you really do feel that this is, you're a massive red beacon and everyone is looking at you. Yeah. So a difficult time, I think. Good discussion to be had.
Well, let's welcome Amy to the show. So we're now going to welcome Amy Bennie to chat about the Daisy Network. Amy's chair of Daisy, and we've established geographically she's in Whitley Bay, where it's sunny. We're all enjoying a bit of sunshine at the moment. It's like an Indian summer that's happening in the UK, which is glorious. So Amy, welcome to Talk Fertility.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome, Amy. It's great to talk to you.
Thank you very much. Nice to talk to you both too.
So first of all, let's find out a bit about what Daisy Network does. Kate and I were just talking about how menopause has been in the press much more lately, and we're keen to basically signpost people to what support is there for them. So can you just tell us a bit about what you do?
Yeah, sure. So Daisy is the only charity that supports girls and women with premature ovarian insufficiency. That term does seem a bit, confusing if you've never heard of it before, which a lot of people won't have. In layman's terms, it basically means where your ovaries stop working before the age of natural menopause, so usually before the age of 40. So we support women and girls who have gone through that diagnosis, some as young as teens. We provide support in terms of medical advice, local support to meet others in your area, and also we aim to raise awareness of the condition within the medical community as well, because GPs usually aren't too familiar with the condition, so it is quite a funny one to diagnose, and often people get, different diagnosis and different treatment depending on who you see. So we are aiming to raise awareness of POI within the medical community, but with people who have been diagnosed with it.
And how common is POI then, Amy?
So it varies depending on age. So 1 in 100 women under the age of 40 can get diagnosed with it, 1 in 1,000 women under 30, and 1 in 10,000 women under 20. Those statistics are from spontaneous POI, which means that it happens for an unknown reason. Obviously, there is some other women that get diagnosed with it, and the numbers for that vary, but it's for things like cancer treatments, some chemotherapies, radiotherapies can then induce menopause. So those are additional women as well.
And you talked about trying to raise awareness within the medical professions. Is there an issue with the length of time it takes to diagnose POI?
Absolutely, yeah. So the diagnosis, it's a simple blood test, but the problem comes where a lot of women will go with various symptoms and it is just put down to hormones or, fluctuating hormones or due to being on the pill. So, I mean, I can go into a bit more discussion about the actual symptoms soon, but often GPs, especially when younger women go to them, don't expect it to be early menopause, so it is quite often just brushed off as hormonal changes. Some GPs will just handle it themselves, others get sent to specialists, so there is no set routine of diagnosis, and that's kind of where the problem comes. And it can often be a case of women going back and forwards to the GP with a whole host of various symptoms before they actually get the tests for POI.
Okay, so tell us about these symptoms then. How might a woman start to notice that things aren't quite right, and what would she present with her GP to? What would be her main concerns?
Yeah, so again, it varies depending on the age. So for younger women, for those under 20, it can often be the case that they don't get periods at all, so they never actually start their periods. Often it's a case where they get to 15 or 16, go to the doctors, and then the tests will be done, because the NICE guidelines suggest that if you haven't started your periods by 15, then POI investigations should be done. For a lot of girls, they might start their periods once and then they never have them again. And again, this is where the problem lies, because a lot of GPs will just think, oh, you know, your hormones are just settling down, we'll wait a couple of years, and it gets ignored. As you get older, often it's women that have been on the pill for a lot of years will then come off the pill, whether it's to start a family or to give their body a rest, and they'll find that their periods don't return. And often when you get to late 20s, 30s, 40s, you will start getting those typical menopausal symptoms, such as the hot flushes, the mood swings, weight gain, all of those really pleasant symptoms that women get. But they'll get them, you know, at a much earlier age. So yeah, the mood swings, the anxiety, night sweats, tiredness. And again, a lot of this can be put down to life factors such as just stress, you know, busy jobs. Women at this time, you know, 30s, 40s, they're often dealing with busy jobs and they've got a lot going on. So often it isn't thought that it could be actually menopausal symptoms. So it is basically those typical menopausal symptoms that usually present themselves, which can often be like quite a shock if, you know, you're in your late 20s and 30s and you start getting the same hot sweats that your mum's getting, you know, and she's in her 50s, 60s.
And is this talked about at all in kind of sex education at school? I mean, we know that fertility generally isn't, so it's very unlikely.
That's the thing, you know, menopause isn't even really talked about, so especially not premature menopause. I know, you know, it discusses contraception and how not to get pregnant, but it never discusses what happens if actually you can't get pregnant, or what happens if you find out about this will happen when your periods start, but what happens if they don't start, you know. So this is something that isn't ever really discussed at all. So it is one of those things that's quite an unknown condition.
Yeah, that's my biggest frustration, actually, Amy, that fertility isn't talked about in schools. And I know there's a movement at the moment to start talking more about fertility because, you know, we spend our life, don't we, in our teenage years doing everything you possibly can to avoid getting pregnant. And then when you want to get pregnant, if you don't have that information and knowledge or an awareness of what the problems could be, it just makes it a lot more difficult.
Absolutely. And I think that's part of the issue for the women that are diagnosed, say, in their late 20s, 30s, 40s. It's when the time comes where they decide to come off the pill to start their family, and they're at that point in their life where they're really, you know, ready to start, and they've got that desperation to get pregnant, and then they find out they can't, you know, and they've had no preparation before that to deal with it, because it's automatically just assumed, well, as soon as I come off the pill, you know, I'll try a couple of times and I'll get pregnant. Well, unfortunately, that isn't the case, and a lot of women aren't prepared for that.
No, absolutely. So we've obviously talked about what the symptoms are and when then somebody is eventually diagnosed. And I know this is probably going to be a huge topic, but I'm quite interested to hear more about the treatments that are available for women in this situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So getting a diagnosis is as simple as, well, I'm saying as simple as, but it tends to be a blood test. So you get your FSH levels checked about 4 weeks apart. So yeah, you'll have a consistent high level of FSH, which is basically your brain screaming at your ovaries to work and they're not responding. In terms of treatment for POI, it is usually a case of replacing the low estrogen because your ovaries will no longer be producing estrogen. So it is recommended that you take HRT, or the combined oral contraceptive pill can be used to sort of treat the symptoms, but long-term health, HRT is recommended. So it's often a case where you will get your blood test taken to find out your estrogen levels, and then take a combined estrogen and progesterone HRT to get your levels up to a quote-unquote normal range for your age. And that's to protect your bone health and replace the estrogen that you were lacking. I know a lot of women are concerned about the health implications of HRT. So, for example, there's a breast cancer risk. With POI, you're replacing what should be there. So actually your risk of breast cancer doesn't really increase, which is good to know. Other treatments, because of your lack of estrogen, your bone density decreases. So you are at risk of osteoporosis. So we recommend taking a vitamin D and calcium supplement just to help keep your bones strong, and get regular DEXA bone scans to check your osteoporosis risk. The HRT will also protect your heart and brain function, because that can also decrease with lack of estrogen. So they're basically the day-to-day treatments that will help
quite
you.
Quite a lot there.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Quite a lot to consider, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a huge amount to consider, because also, it's not as simple as starting HRT or just the contraceptive pill. You've got to weigh up which options are best for you. You can get the HRT in so many different forms. So whether you want the patches, the tablets, you can have the Mirena coil. So there is so many things to discuss, whether it's with your GP or whether you're sent to a specialist. So it's not as easy as, here's a pill, go away and it solves all of your problems. HRT comes with its own problems as well. Some people get really bad side effects from it. Other people, take it really easily and sail for it. So there is a lot to consider when it comes to your treatment, and it is often, unfortunately, a case of trial and error. So it can take months, sometimes years, to find a medication that actually does suit you.
Because you talked about the side effects, and it leads on quite nicely. We wanted to just talk about the implications of dealing with it, because you've got to make all these decisions, and especially if you're being diagnosed as a teen. This is, I assume, where Daisy stepped into its own, providing support and opening up the conversation, so you know who you can ask, if there's a community that you can share experiences of side effects and treatments. I mean, is that what you ultimately are offering? It's that support?
Absolutely. So with POI, there's often not a lot of places to turn to. So Daisy offers a variety of different support networks. So we have our medical support, where we offer live chats with our POI specialists, which are twice a month, where you can actually ask them direct medical questions and they can give you sort of tailored advice, obviously to use still in conjunction with your own specialist's advice, but it's just to have that extra sort of backup of, what do you recommend would be good for me if I have these symptoms and these symptoms. We also provide local support, so around the country, and actually we're branching out around the world as well now. We call them regional coordinators, so it's one person. So I'm the Northeast coordinator, we have a Northwest, we have a Southeast, and these are the main hub in your area where you can connect with them and arrange meetups, have a chat with somebody, discuss local specialists, referrals of what works for you, who do you see in your area. And I think having that little group of people who are going through the same thing, especially in your area, makes such a difference, because you can actually meet them face to face, go out for a coffee and a chat, and it just makes things so much easier to process. We also have a private members Facebook group, which has just been incredible on there. I would say on a daily basis, it's just constant conversation between women asking for advice, sharing stories, and I think that just really eases a lot of people's worries and doubts that they're alone, because they can see just from accessing this private Facebook group that there is hundreds of other women who are going through exactly the same thing and can offer their support. We also have a annual conference where we call it Daisy Day, so it's not a conference, we like to step away from the formal name, but we have Daisy Day, which is a great day where people come and we have specialists who do talks, and it's just a day where women with POI can get together and spend the day together learning about the condition and meeting others in the same position, and also learning more about treatments and wellness side of things. So we do offer a variety of different ways to connect with other women. So that's really where we come in. It's to offer that support and a place just really for women to go when they're feeling a little bit lost and lonely and don't have anywhere to turn to. That's where we come in, so they can find either the local support or just more general support of a community who understands.
And are you reaching the teens with that support? Are they opening up to it, or is it normally the mum of a teen?
No, absolutely it is. It's both. So, for example, on our conference day, we tend to find that it's mums come along with their daughters. Often the daughters have come along reluctantly, but the mums find it so helpful to meet other mums that are in the same position and to find other women who understand, especially because a lot of our support is online. The younger women find us really easily. That is if they are referred to us, and that's another thing that we are trying to to work on is raise the awareness of Daisy, because we want to be the first point of call for women that are diagnosed. So if you are diagnosed by your GP or a specialist, they should be getting referred to our service straight away, and that's often where the barrier is, because it takes women quite a lot of time to find us, because GPs and things don't often refer to us immediately. So teens do find us through, we have an Instagram page which is really active, and that's often where they'll find us, and on Facebook as well. So because we are based a lot on social media, they do tend to find us. And we also have a separate private members Facebook group that's purely for teens, because I think it is such a different diagnosis. It can be different to handle, because the thing is, with the teen diagnosis, the fertility isn't really your main issue at that point. You know, you've got plenty of other things going on with school and exams and friends and relationships, that the fertility seems to be years in the future, that you don't really have to deal with it right this second. So it can be a different diagnosis that changes, the outlook of your entire future. So we do have that separate, more private group for teens to discuss with each other.
With regards to kind of the fertility conversations then, what type of conversations do you have with ladies that are, in their 20s, 30s, 40s that have been affected by POI? What kind of discussions do you have?
Yeah, so the thing is with POI, fertility-wise, about 5 to 10% of women can spontaneously ovulate. So obviously that can result in a natural pregnancy. It is extremely rare though.
Very low, isn't it?
Very, very low. Because it's kind of as if you're postmenopausal, you're no longer producing eggs. So fertility-wise, your options tend to be IVF with egg donation. That is the most successful route. Obviously there's adoption, and many women choose to live positively childless as well. We do tend to focus on the egg donation route, and that is the most successful route of carrying a pregnancy, because with POI, your uterus, unless you've got it due to cancer treatments and had a hysterectomy or anything like that, uterus is still functioning, so you can actually carry a pregnancy in most cases. So egg donation is the most successful route. So you can have that either by anonymous donor or a known donor, which is a friend or relative. Again, a lot of problems that our members have is the postcode lottery with IVF, which causes a lot of discussion. We do have on our website a map of fertility specialists in each area around the UK. But also, again, it is sort of hit and miss as to whether you get IVF on the NHS. For example, where I live up in the northeast, you get 3 rounds of IVF free, but in the Midlands, you don't get any free. It just makes no sense to me, and I don't know where the logic comes in that.
No.
So that's a lot of the issues that our members have, is discussing, private healthcare. They share stories of where they've went for IVF, what was successful, which hospitals they recommend. So that is a lot of our service as well, is pointing people in the right direction for egg donation.
So Amy, being a medical professional myself, I'm really interested in understanding a little bit more about the work that Daisy does with the medical community. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So we do have a research branch of Daisy, which are always looking and working with the medical community to look into things like genetics and genetic testing to find if there is any chromosomes or any specific tests that can be done to predict and find POI. So we do have that branch. But the other branch that we do is trying to raise awareness within the medical community, such as GPs or gynecology departments. What we are rolling out in the next few months is we have printed a lot of Daisy materials, so leaflets, posters, and we are reaching out to local GP surgeries, hospitals, fertility centres, and sharing the word of Daisy with them. So sharing what Daisy does, what we're about, and putting our materials within their building, just again to make sure that we are a point of contact for anybody diagnosed. For example, I went to a gynecology department that was full of, leaflets and posters, and there was no mention whatsoever of Daisy, and I was like, that is the perfect place where our materials should be. So across the country we have a big outreach project going on, where each of our regional coordinators are going out to approach all of our local GPs and hospitals. It's really a big drive really to get the name of Daisy out there. And also we do that through social media as well, by connecting with medical professionals on platforms like Twitter. And again, it's just making sure that the word of Daisy is shared out among the medical community, really just to raise awareness of the condition and of the charity and what we do. I think, again, a lot of our members find us through our website, which then leads to the private Facebook group. So I definitely think, we are picking up our social media, because I think especially with the younger women, Instagram is the place where they tend to find us.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just spreading yourself everywhere, because like you said at the start,
Absolutely.
You are a charity, and it is still about raising awareness and ultimately getting funding for the work that you do. And is that something that's always a challenge? Do you do much fundraising activity?
Absolutely. So we are a completely voluntary run charity. Everybody that works with Daisy are there, because it's a passion project. We're doing it completely voluntary in our own time. We have our annual conference, which people buy tickets for. Tickets are usually about £15. So that's one way that we fundraise. We also have really generous members who are always doing some great fundraising for us. So, for example, we've just had one of our members climb Kilimanjaro to raise money for us.
Oh, Kate.
I climbed Kili.
Did you? Oh, wow.
You're in good company.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's great.
So, yeah, she's raised a lot of money for us doing that. We have people that have done, 100k walks and cycle rides and spa days. So it's actually a lot of our fundraising comes from our members. We do get a lot involved in various events, and where, if we participate in events, they'll make a donation to Daisy. So we do have fundraising, but like that, because we are entirely voluntary run, our resources are stretched. So we do have to make a plan of action in how to use our resources to the full potential to get the word out there.
I would like to understand a bit more about the POI registry and what that entails. Do people kind of put their names on it? What is it?
Yeah, so people put their names on it, but it tends to have to come from a specialist. So you tend to have to be referred to the registry, which again is something that is often not done. I personally am not sort of involved in the research side of things or the registry. That is a different branch. But there's something called the 1000 Genome Project, which POI is involved in, which Daisy has been, supporting to get POI on there. So we have Bianca as our research guru who is involved in that. So I feel like that will be a huge step when that's sort of released, because obviously that will give us a lot more insight into the causes of POI, because majority of it is just idiopathic. There is no known cause for it.
So it's not genetic?
Well, it can be, but majority of it is idiopathic, so it just happens spontaneously for no known reason. It does tend to be some correlation between if your mum went through early menopause, but the problem is there is no test to determine whether you will also get it. So for the majority of women, it is just idiopathic. There is some chromosomal deficiencies, so Turner syndrome, Fragile X syndrome, they can all cause it. But again, that is really rare. The majority of it is just completely spontaneous, unless you've also gone through things like cancer treatment, radiotherapy, where you've physically changed your ovaries or had hysterectomy. But yeah, so that's the problem with it, is that it is so random, I suppose, that there is no way to detect if it's going to happen for now, unless future research detects otherwise. It could be, a chromosome abnormality that we don't realise can cause it.
So let's get to the big question and the nitty gritty about HRT and breast cancer risk, because this is an area that I know has quite a lot of scaremongering and puts women into panic. And I've seen women, go in and say to their GP, right, that's it, I'm stopping HRT. I've read in the newspaper about the most recent study, and I'm terrified and I'm stopping HRT. And I know that how us as medical professionals, we tend to deal with that. What's your kind of take on it, and particularly the most recent study that has just been published into HRT and breast cancer risk?
Absolutely. So for women with POI, HRT is vital, really. Without the estrogen, you have risk of osteoporosis, heart disease, cognitive function problems. So HRT is vital for replacing that estrogen that your body is lacking and your body needs up until the age of around 52. In terms of the breast cancer link with POI, like I mentioned previously, you are taking your hormone levels up to the normal range for somebody your age. So it's not passing the levels, you're not getting over the amount of estrogen that you're meant to have. You are just replacing what your body is lacking. So that shouldn't increase your risk of breast cancer. The way that it can be increased is if you have a family history of breast cancer. But again, this is something that needs to be discussed with your GP or specialist, because that still doesn't mean that you shouldn't take it if you have POI, because you've got to outweigh the risks and the benefits. You know, POI does have such an impact on a lot of your body, and HRT is the one way to stop those nasty symptoms. The most recent research into breast cancer and the HRT link, which has come out and caused a lot of scaremongering amongst the POI community, is that it has been proven that breast cancer does increase with HRT. But again, this study doesn't look into women with early menopause or POI. So again, the statistics that they've shared don't really relate when it comes to POI. You know, it fails to mention things like alcoholism and obesity have more of a risk of breast cancer than HRT. So I think it is just doing your research and weighing up what's best for you. But I know all of the POI medical industry will say that HRT is really vital for your entire body function. It is a personal choice, but you've got to weigh up the pros and cons and weigh up your options.
Absolutely.
It must be so hard. It must be such a hard one to try and get your head around, especially when, like you say, there's all the scaremongering, Kate. So, next steps for anybody listening to get in touch with Daisy, if we're hopefully getting people to realise that they're not alone navigating their way through this, which is the point of what we make the show for, but particularly when it comes to either POI or just menopause in general and you're struggling, where's the best place? We've mentioned the Facebook groups, all the different social platforms. First steps for people to take.
Yeah, so the first steps, I would just Google Daisy Network and our website will come up. On our website, you will find the main information that you will need to learn about POI. So you'll learn about the diagnostic tests that you'd need to have. You learn about treatments. You learn about specialists in your local area. So that is the main hub of information. What we do have, again, because we are a voluntary run service, we do have a membership, which you do have to pay for. It's £20, and that gives you access to the medical live chats in our private Facebook pages. And the reason we do have that fee is because that is our way of raising some money. You know, we couldn't provide the services we do without that fee. But I mean, on our website as a whole, you will get plenty of information if you don't want to join. We still have our social media pages that are accessible to everybody. So then from our website, you can head to our Facebook page where you will find plenty of discussion, plenty of other women there to share stories. And again, our Instagram pages and Twitter are always getting updated with new information and blogs to read that we post on various aspects of POI and wellness. So yeah, once you've accessed our website, you are open to a whole world of POI.
Yeah, an old Daisy world. Well, we'll make sure all the links are in the show notes for this so people can find Daisy with ease. Thank you, Amy. It's been very educational, actually. I hadn't realised how varied the things to consider from the things you have to deal with day to day and the treatments that you have to consider are. So really useful.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is a whole lifestyle change, really. I think the phrase early menopause, I think, often gets overlooked because I think people just assume, oh, early menopause, you know, everyone goes through menopause. Does it really matter if you get it a little bit early? But you know, I think that's where the terminology has changed to premature ovarian insufficiency, because that takes away the stigma of menopause, really, and you realise it is an entirely different condition to just menopause. You know, it affects so many different things and your whole body functions and your whole outlook on fertility and what might have been your life plan can change from this diagnosis. So it isn't just as simple as going through menopause a few years early.
Yeah, it's all the comorbidities that come along with that, isn't it? Like you've mentioned, the risks of heart disease, the risk of issues with bone density, the increased risk of Alzheimer's. There's so many issues that need to be considered, and it is so much more than just the menopause.
Absolutely.
And period stopping. It's so much more than that.
Well, exactly, yeah. And I think a lot of people focus on the fertility, which obviously is the main thing. Yes, you can't have your own biological children, but that is just one aspect of it as well. There are so many other things to consider along with it.
Which I never knew. Really, really useful. Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Amy. That was great. You were really good.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Gosh, I really didn't realise the impact of that next stage of life, or that early stage of life. I really thought it was just a bit of hormones. I knew a bit about the relation to breast cancer, but about the osteoporosis and all these other things, it's really opened my eyes.
It is. I think it's little known, all the comorbidities, and how, as Amy said, it's not just considering your fertility, but it's considering all other aspects of your life and having to make a really informed decision as to whether you start taking HRT to protect yourself against what could be some really significant conditions and illnesses, but taking into consideration the kind of slight HRT risk as well.
Because are you on it then for life once you start it?
Yeah, I mean, you'd be on it until effectively the age where the majority of women would go through the menopause naturally, which is the mean age of the menopause is 52. So you'd be on it really up until that point. So I have a little bit of personal experience with regards to this, because when I was 32, after having, luckily for me, I'd had my second child by that point, my periods completely stopped. I had one period after I finished breastfeeding Archie, and I never had another one.
At 32?
At 32. So I thought initially I've gone into premature menopause. Actually, my diagnosis was slightly different. It was something called hypothalamic amenorrhea, which often...
Now that would win you points at Scrabble.
It would, yeah. But often hypothalamic amenorrhea is due to either incredible stress or weight loss. And I had neither of those. I might have had a little bit of stress because my children were young and my husband was away with work a lot. But, other than that, there was nothing kind of, major going on. And yeah, it all just stopped. And I made the decision to, after a number of years actually, to take HRT. And that was quite a big decision for me because I've got a massive family history of breast cancer. My mum died of breast cancer in her early 40s. My sisters had breast cancer, and my grandmother in later life had breast cancer. So I had to make that difficult decision. And I made that decision based on the fact that actually I was osteopenic, so my bones had started to become, nowhere near as healthy as they should be for a woman of my age. And I was concerned about the other conditions, as Amy explained, and I had to make that informed decision. And it wasn't an easy decision, but I'm still on my HRT now, and luckily for me, I'm seen yearly at the Royal Marsden for mammogram on their family history trial. And I'm so lucky and so privileged to have had that screening for a number of years now. And they're happy for me to stay on HRT until I'm 50. So I have to stop it at 50. I'm counting the years that I've got left, to be honest, because I just don't like the idea of stopping it.
And then do you get given advice on what to do next, what to replace what you're getting from the HRT with?
Good question. I hope so. I don't know where I'll get that advice from. I mean, I've already started making some investigations into kind of more herbal remedies to see if there's something that I could consider then. Because when I worked many years ago, I worked in a menopause clinic, and I know there are a number of, like black cohosh and a number of herbs that can help women with menopausal symptoms. So that might be something that I look into. I think my plan is to have an incredibly positive mindset about it all, and that hopefully I'll be absolutely fine. But we'll have to wait and see.
And again, if anybody has any experiences to share, then do get in touch, talkfertility@gmail.com, which is how we also answer your questions, which we will be doing. We were going to just highlight a study that was done earlier in the year about women being able to halt the menopause, and we are hoping that we'll get to chat with Simon Fisher, who is behind this study. He's very well known in the fertility space. He's the president of Care Fertility, and he was involved in the early days of IVF treatment at Bourne Hall in Cambridge with Bob Edwards and Robert Steptoe. And I think we probably need to save this for another chat, Kate, because we could talk for quite a long time on it. But the idea that we could halt the menopause, do you think that's a positive thing?
I think it has a huge amount of connotations, and I think it's interesting, and it could be the answer for a number of women. Particularly, I think, if you're considering women who are undergoing cancer treatment, having that ability, I think would be incredible. I think there's a lot that needs to be considered before this moves too further forward. and it would be really interesting to talk to Professor Fischel about it. So far, I think 9 women have had the procedure to remove and freeze their ovarian tissue. So it's early days, really early days. And I think it would be interesting to keep an eye on the research to see how things progress with this, how much more they do, and whether this does become a game changer.
Definitely fascinating stuff. Well, like I say, we will seek out a potential conversation with Professor Simon Fischel so we can explore it more, because that's what we want to do here on Talk Fertility, is talk about the issues that need more talk. And we also need to answer some of your questions. You can email us talkfertility@gmail.com. Kate is a medical professional. I am a life professional. No, but seriously, hopefully you'll get most of the sense from Kate and I will just chip in. So do get your questions coming in, because it's lovely to hear from you. What's the latest one that we have?
So we had one from a lady who is in between appointments with her consultant, and she wants to know what positive changes, proactive things that she could do while waiting for her follow-up appointment. And I get asked this a lot, actually, because I think when you're waiting for an appointment, the whole fertility journey is an eternity, isn't it? You're constantly waiting for the next thing. But there are so many proactive things that you can do, and it really depends on your health generally and how much you need to optimize fertility. But simple things like taking the right supplements for you. Get advice on that, because not everybody needs to take exactly the same supplements. There are certain things like folic acid or folate, depending on your choice, vitamin D and a good omega-3, but then there might be some others that you need. Really concentrate on diet. Good nutrition is key for fertility. Protein is your building block, so lots and lots of protein, and keep the refined carbohydrates and sugars low. Exercise, not only does it obviously help with just general health benefits, and especially if you need to lose a little bit of weight, but also that feel-good factor, that endorphin rush, that feeling good after you've exercised. That's really important to do, so definitely recommend getting your trainers out and getting on with some exercise. Drink lots of water, limit your caffeine, definitely reduce your alcohol, but get a balance. This whole fertility journey is a long thing, so one glass of alcohol on a Friday night to kick back after a busy week at work is not going to do you any harm. It's not going to stop you getting pregnant. But definitely don't smoke, and that's pretty much for both of you. So all those tips really are not just for the woman but for the man too.
Can I add a few things into the mix there? Because I know you're the evidence-based professional, but I did use acupuncture whilst I was going through treatment, and wherever you're at with having some time out for yourself through all of this, if you find, and again, do your research and make sure you go to recommended fertility practitioners, but reflexology and acupuncture are ways in which you can have some time out from the stress of it all and a bit of me time. There's still questions as to the evidence of them actually helping. But saying that, I've spoken with brilliant acupuncturists and reflexologists on this podcast who will give you the evidence that they have been working on to date. So it's not a kind of black and white argument that it does or doesn't work.
No, not at all. And I think anecdotally, I see a lot of women who might choose acupuncture to increase luteal phase, for example, and you do see the benefits of it. And definitely with reflexology, the relaxation benefits are huge. So I would always encourage somebody to find a complementary therapy that they're interested in, that suits their needs, and go with it.
And just finally, the other thing I'd say, because we're so guilty of doing this when we're in between appointments, is stopping stuff. And yes, obviously stop stuff that's going to be like really stressful, but don't put stuff off that could be lovely, things to enjoy, seeing friends, just doing nice things, even if it's going to see some music you like, or even if it's listening to music that you like. I had a conversation with somebody recently who just didn't sing when they used to always sing. Little simple things that can make your heart sing. Just have that little bit of mindfulness in the mix so that you are still having some moments of joy whilst going through what is a stressful time, especially when it's a waiting game. You get so patient going through treatment, that's for sure.
100%. I think if you can put some nice things into your routine and your life, it will make the whole journey just that little bit easier.
So keep your questions coming in, and if you want to get in touch with us as well on our socials, you can follow me on Instagram or Twitter at FertilityPoddy.
And me on Your Fertility Journey on Instagram.
And we'll be back with you next week.
Show notes for this episode are Daisy Network. Go and check out Amy and all her details of how you can get in touch with them, especially if what we've been talking about is exactly where you're at, or it could be somebody in your family, it could be your sister, it could be a friend. Just please spread the word that there are these amazing support groups available. Also, if you have a moment to rate and review, subscribe and share this podcast, that would be amazing. I've been talking about trying to get my numbers of reviews up to 150. I've not had time to check. I will do once you've taken a moment to go and do whatever. That would be lovely. I'm going to nip off because the workmen have just walked past the scaffolding outside my window and I think they're going to get noisy. Thank you as always for your support, and until the next time,